as an individual joins the party. Is that right?
That's right. Lord Offord is the latest recruit to the ranks of Reform, and it ties into a couple of things. It ties into one, that he's actually going to stand down and try and go for elected office. Lord Offord is, and it also shows how serious Nigel Farage is about Scotland.
Which is saying something, you know, given that they did very badly in Scotland, didn't they? They had very little support, but he's really thinks they can make progress now.
Yeah, and I think he sees it as if he can take the sort of local elections in England, the Welsh elections and in Scotland, and he can really show that they have got momentum now. If one of those things doesn't quite work, there's actually a pointed question here where he's actually asked, do you think that Reform has peaked? Now, that's an interesting point because they've got to about 30% in the polls or so. How do they get through that bit further? And it's going to be very, very difficult when you've got so many parties to actually go above that. But I think one of the interesting things on Lord Offord as well, he's very close to Kemi Badenoch. He was a minister in her department when she was at the Department for Business. He was a key supporter for her leadership bid. So it is interesting that someone like that has switched. You tie that in with the amount of money that Reform got this week, £9 million from a new investor. They always said they needed about £10 million to fight those local elections. So the momentum is with them at the moment, but let's just see how all this pans out in the coming months.
And you probably said this, but Lord Offord is Scottish, of course.
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
So, Badisha, it's interesting, isn't it? Because in this article it says that Nigel Farage's personal ratings are very low in Scotland. In fact, they're on a par with Keir Starmer's, who, as we know, nationwide, that his personal ratings are low. But they obviously feel that they have an argument there. I noticed that he was going up to Falkirk, wasn't he, to hold a meeting. And they feel that there, for example, it's become a bit of a focal point for the immigration debate, and also there are job losses nearby as well, and they feel they can capitalise on that. And obviously it will make a big difference to them nationally, you know, across the home nations, if he can make progress in Scotland.
Yeah, this is a really crucial moment for me, because actually 30% electorally doesn't sound like very much, but culturally, all you need to sway a populace to any belief whatsoever is a critical mass of around 30%. If you can somehow take advantage of people's grievances and then you bundle it up with some kind of narrative about it was better before, there were better jobs at some mythical period in time 40, 50 years before, and you can really capture hearts and minds, then you're right in there. And Farage is being extremely strategic, regardless of whether people agree with his own personal brand or whatever it might be. And so I'm watching this incredibly carefully. And I'm also looking at his language. He's talking about, you know, we have this army, we're going to storm in here, we're going to get all of these votes, we're going to transform. He's offering these things which are so simplistic. But to voters who are usually pretty agnostic, you know, it's incredibly persuasive. If you have a very long-standing voting history in either direction, you don't tend to switch, and that's definitely true of Labour and the left. But Farage comes in and he can get all those people who usually feel totally disaffected by the political landscape.
And it feels like traditional loyalties are shifting now anyway.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
It also comes, I suppose, at a time when he's facing those allegations of racism from his school days, but also in the week where he said to donors that they were going to merge with the Conservative Party. The Conservatives quickly distanced themselves from that.
Absolutely.
But he is still saying that could be a possibility.
Yeah, I was just on that. It seems that who wants to sort of throw your cards on the table before an election? You don't really want to say, oh, we'll do a deal with the Tories, we'll do a deal with Reform. So just like your manifesto, your programme for government is just going to be watered down. The voters won't know what they're actually going to get. But at some point, someone's going to have some grown-up conversations, because it's fractious on the left, it's fractious on the right, and someone needs to sit down and thrash out some deals.
OK, take us on, Badisha, now to the front of the Sunday Times. It's not their main story, but they do have an article here about Nicolas Sarkozy and his time in prison.
It's not their main story because this involves the world's smallest violin. And if you look at the little caption next to it, also the world's smallest prison cell. So Nicolas Sarkozy was given a 5-year sentence because of Libyan funding into his 2007 campaign. And he has served 3 weeks at La Santé prison. But don't worry, the 3 weeks gave him lots of time to think about his career, and he got a book deal out of it.
Pretty good, isn't it? You write books in 3 weeks,
Yeah, he really thought about how can I fix my career in those 3 weeks, and it's called The Diary of a Prisoner. And he didn't like prison very much. He said it was very grey, very boring. He said, "There's nothing to see and nothing to do." I don't know what he was expecting from prison.
Politicians who've been to prison who have turned their careers around and made, and campaigned on behalf of prison reform. And I mean, it could it be a
could be a turning point. You look at Jonathan Aitken, who's obviously spent the last 20, 25 years or so who's campaigned on that. So
I think he's campaigning on behalf of himself right now, not prisoners reform.
Just before we move on, the nice detail here, his diet consisted largely of dairy products, cereal bars, mineral water, apple juice, and a few sweet treats.
I know, but mineral water, right?
Right, exactly.
Not ordinary tap for Nicolas.
No, maybe it was a Perrier. All right, let's move on.
Yeah, let's move on. We're moving on to the Daily Mail next. And this is MPs who live too far outside London to benefit from some of the extra help that those in London get with their expenses. Is that right?
That's right. MPs, say you live in Scotland, you live a few hours away from London, you are entitled to around £30,000 a year in costs, accommodation, just so you can actually live in London. Now, there seems to be a little bit of a discrepancy for people who live sort of 35, 40 minutes away from London, and whether they should move up from getting a sort of £6,000 extra allowance to actually getting the full amount. Now, I actually get the train in quite often with one of these people who are pictured, and I think the trouble is if they move up from the sort of 6,000 to the extra £30,000. All those other people who are commuting in, are having to commute back every single night, and you know that MP...
You crossed about it already, is that what you're saying?
No, exactly. And,
he's having to get his ticket paid for.
No, exactly. Exactly. If you know that they're going to be staying at night because they have a late finish at 10, half 10, they can stay in a hotel or have accommodation nearby where everyone else is toiling back home. I think that will anger a lot of people. So I think they just have to be very, very careful about this. There may be some sort of halfway house on this where they can claim a little bit more extra money for staying over on a Monday or Tuesday when there's late votes. But to claim the full amount is going to be very difficult.
Alicia, thought?
I agree with that. It's going to make people very angry. I mean, if you're an MP, you chose that job. You went through the hard yards of being elected, and this is part of it. Doing this strange, exotic thing called commuting doesn't mean that you can then read all the T's and C's and try to figure out how you get the full amount. Even if you have the literal and technical right to that, think about how it comes across. Because exactly as you say, you're sharing your actual train with people who are not MPs. They don't have a lovely, glamorous, important, significant job. They are working much harder, probably, for much less, probably.
It's interesting, isn't it, that they've even decided to make this something they're trying to argue, because does everyone remember the expenses scandal?
Yeah.
How much tore things apart?
Yeah.
Duck houses and whatever else.
One rule for us.
Right.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Maybe there'll be a halfway.
Yeah, I think there'll have to be just to iron it out.
Patricia, let's move on to the Mail on Sunday, I should say. I think I said Daily Mail earlier as well. Mail on Sunday. This article that you've picked out here really plays into this whole debate at the moment about whether some people are being overdiagnosed for anxieties that others, maybe some in the older generation, have put down to normal stresses and strains. But it's a really important debate. This is a head teacher getting involved.
Yes, this is James Dull, Master of Wellington College. But exactly as you say, it keys into Wes Streeting ordering an investigation into the idea of overdiagnosis, mainly for autism and ADHD. But it also keys into us using these buzzwords, which we got from psychobabble on the internet. So if you have a bad day, then you say you're having a bad mental health day, even though those are the normal ups and downs and strains of ordinary life. Or you say you're feeling anxiety, you've got anxiety disorder when you're just nervous about something. And now, so James Dull is saying, look, we really need to address this, particularly in the very young, because they're very susceptible to the fashions and fads of using these buzzwords, but they're also over-pathologizing themselves. So it's very normal to be nervous about a maths test. It doesn't mean that you're struggling in school. It doesn't mean that you're bad at this forever, and it doesn't mean that you should be stigmatized. I do think that a touch of impatience has entered this debate, because it is clearly, obviously true that we are using technical terms for things which don't meet technical diagnosis standards.
And yet could well be that kids are suffering more anxiety, perhaps because of social media, perhaps the aftermath of COVID. You know, it could be that there really is a bigger problem, and it's good at least that young people are talking about how they're feeling, whereas in the past, perhaps previous generations
wouldn't speak about it.
Wouldn't talk about the struggles they had.
Yeah.
What do you think of this?
I think that there clearly is a bigger problem than there was 10, 15, 20 years ago. I think the issue is if you have teenagers who have mental health, anxiety problems, they then get to 18, 20, 21 or so, and they're then claiming benefits, and it's very, very difficult to get off these benefits. I've seen stories, and I've done stories over recent weeks. There's, you know, 3 or 4 million people in this country who don't have they can claim benefits, but no requirement to actually get work. So I don't think you want to be in that situation, because obviously the welfare bill goes up. You need to try and get people into work, trying to do some work. You know, that actually may make them better. I think just keeping them off work may actually be making them worse.
Or having support medically,
Yeah.
you know, having mental health support if there are issues that are stopping them getting into work.
And to be assessed by experts and to take this out of the realm of podcasts and online and all the rest of it.
Self-help by TikTok. We don't have loads of time left. Do you think we've got time to get to both stories, or should we move on to this one in the... I think it's in the Mirror, actually,
OK, yeah, go for
about
it.
children using face masks. I mean, I saw this actually on my timeline in the week, and I scrolled past it because I thought just sounds terrible. But take us through the reporting here, Ryan, if you can.
Yeah, no, it just seems it's one of those stories where children, you know, as young as 4, who are having these face masks actually sort of apply to them, and I just kind of feel that's
to improve
just
their skin, is it?
Yeah. It just feels like this is maybe adults can do this if they have their choice, but for children, it just kind of feels a step too far. This is maybe a teenage thing, or
well, it's below teenage. It's a new brand called Rinny, which has been started up by an actor called Shay Mitchell, and she's saying that for little kids below 10, they can put on a face mask, and the idea of skincare is folded very cynically into the idea of play. So the face masks have little animal faces on them, like pandas, and they're selling it as being, oh, you saw your mummy do her skincare, well, you can be part of this too. This is part of self-care routines. And doctors are saying, look, if you're a little kid, your skin barrier is still developing and it's really strong.
Absolutely, the epidermis is still developing as a 4-year-old. Now, they've got chemicals in them that adults would put on their skin.
So some of these skincare masks have got vitamin E in them, and they're supposed to sit on the skin and improve your skin. But the thing is, little kids don't need any skin improvement whatsoever, and they also don't need to be fostered as future consumers of the beauty industry. This is just to make them overlook at themselves in the mirror, worry about their parents, think they're not good enough. And as soon as you have a dissatisfied consumer who thinks that they need to be improved, you've got their money, you've got their loyalty through their insecurities.
I'm just looking to see, to put forward the company's point of view. It just says the brand's website says our mission is simple: to nurture healthy habits and spark confidence. That's what they say. We've got a minute. Let's cover this story about rock legends. Talk us through it. Right,
yes, big figures from the music industry, Mark Knopfler, Dire Straits, and Pete Townsend from The Who, are basically saying it could be too expensive to actually make money in this country, because music studios are paying extremely high business rates. Music studios are counted as office space. They don't count for, or they don't get, or entitled to business rates relief like hospitality, retail and leisure. And there's one studio, Church Studios, having to pay an extra £20,000 in music studios. So the cost of making music in this country, there's a fear that it could be made abroad.
And I love the way they've juxtaposed it with a picture of Rachel Reeves
just by chance,
icing biscuits like she doesn't care. That's kind of how
I thought that was Chrissy Hind for a moment.
I think it's Rachel Reeves.
In a second job.
I think it's our wrestler. All right, Ryan, Patricia, guys, thanks so much for that. Have a good morning, and thank you all for being with us. Back with your stories of the day next.
What might happen if Russia attacked the UK?
This is